welcome back to another episode of Quarantine Talks. With me right now, I've probably got what you define as a shot stopper. Really, really, really good one that as well. So I've got my guy Chris with me. How you doing, bro? You right?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for being here. So I've had loads of conversations with different people. And as you know, life's changed completely for everyone. But the one thing that I've been really interested in is now that everyone's not in a routine every day, what's your diet saying at the moment?
It's not too bad, you know. I've got a big diet, so like I always eat a lot. I'm normally out of the house for the majority of the day, so I've had to kind of like cut down a little bit on what I'm eating. Meals wise, I'm alright. I snack a little bit, but no, it's not too bad. I won't be putting on any weight. Put it that way. I'll be alright.
Cool. Fair enough. And I mean, how have you found lockdown in general? I mean, we were catching up previously, and I know it's a weird situation for you, right? Because the season is done.
Yeah.
However, there's a possibility that you still may play games, right?
Yeah. So the league season's completely finished, but we've still got a possibility of playing in the FA Trophy semi-final. So like it's a bit of a weird one where I think all the other like, non-league teams, bar a few, they're like know that they're finished until next season, whereas we still kind of have like a little goal in mind that we hopefully might be able to play. So I think that might actually make it a bit easier for us. It's easier and more difficult. I think it's easier to kind of keep everybody working and ticking over because we have that potential goal. Yeah. But then it's also difficult because nobody's going to be 100% sure whether it's going to happen or not. So I think people don't know whether it's to kind of like stick or twist a little bit. So yeah, it's not easy, but yeah, we have that potential.
Yeah, I mean, because like you mentioned, it's a weird phenomenon because, I mean, I know a lot of people their teams have stopped, the season's done, but they're still training. And it's kind of like, you know what, it's pre-season for me. For you, the mental of it's a bit different because it's not really pre-season. You're still training to a goal, but you're not too sure what's going to happen there. How has it been training as a goalkeeper? I mean, I know...
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, because I know there's a few videos floating around with Bravo doing some impromptu stuff with rebounds and stuff like that. How is it like? 'Cause I mean, if you want to do position-specific stuff, doing that in isolation can be a bit difficult, I'm guessing.
Yeah, as a goalie, obviously, there isn't really much you can do that's going to be massively game-related. You can't recreate scenarios that are going to happen in game day unless you're lucky enough to have a family member that's a good footballer as well. Which I don't. I've got my little sister and my mum, so neither of them are going to help me. Yeah. So like you can do like little things just to keep yourself ticking over and stuff. I'm trying to use the time mainly to do like gym work, and then obviously I coach as well. So I coach a few older goalies that are quite good. Yeah. So once I can get back out doing some like one-to-one stuff, I'll jump in with them and we'll do some sessions together. So I'll be all right. It's just for now that stuff that we're doing at home is just going to be more about ticking over or trying to improve physically, I think.
Yeah, and with the coaching stuff you do, because I know that you've been rolling out some training sessions online and stuff.
Yeah.
Being someone that's a coach as well, how has that dynamic been? Because, of course, technology is great, but as we've mentioned before, nothing can kind of replace the actual form of doing something. How has it been trying to shift a lot of that stuff online, especially for younger goalkeepers? How are they finding it?
Yeah, so it's tough. For younger goalies, it's actually all right because obviously when you're younger, you're still kind of learning new techniques and stuff. And the sessions you'll put on, you can do with a parent, because it's quite technical based and the service is quite easy a lot of the time. So a lot of the sessions that we do, they're really easy to recreate. It's more probably going to be like the motivation side of it. Like, will they want to continue to do it when it's their parents serving them, if that makes sense? Yeah. The actual sessions are actually not difficult to put on. It's just, are they going to be motivated to do it when they haven't got a coach, maybe giving that a little bit of extra motivation?
Yeah. Being a goalkeeper at this time, you mentioned it's a bit difficult, but in general, though, the journey you've taken as a goalkeeper, it's quite interesting. When you've played for a few clubs, you moved last season, having been player of the season. At that level and in general, being a goalkeeper, what is it like? Because I know you've kind of, because you was at Gillingham at one point, right?
Yeah, I did my scholarship there.
Yeah. So being a goalkeeper, there's always infinite amount of positions. I mean, you can go for a trial and they might have like looking for 4 centimeters. But when it's a goalkeeper, you might have a goalkeeper going to be there for 10 years, then have a sub goalkeeper. What's it been like for you? Because I don't think it's spoken about a lot, the journeys goalkeepers have to go through, or in general, the sort of journey you went through. Because I mean, in terms of doing trials like that, not a lot of people back themselves in that sort of environment. So how is it journey as a goalkeeper?
Yeah, it's a tough one, to be fair. Like when you go somewhere, if you go somewhere on trial as a goalie, it's very different, because you have to be categorically better than what they've got, and they got to want a new goalie as well. Like if they've got a goalie that's doing well, they're not going to bring someone else in. Whereas a lot of the time, if you're an outfield player, it's a lot easier because you can make amendments in the team, or you can rest people. With a goalie, it's just completely different. So sometimes you have to just bide your time a little bit, and just, like, for example, last season at Haybridge, like I played down there and like loved it. Like I felt like I could play higher, but it was you got to wait for your opportunity, because if no one else is like looking for a goal at the minute, you haven't really got a choice. You can't force your way in as easily, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But, so it's not easy.
Yeah, but even kind of how you got to Gillingham, doing the trials and stuff. What was that like? Because I know once you get through the door, it's still kind of okay. You've got to get a move. You've got to be better. But even getting through that initial door, what was it like, kind of doing all them sort of trials?
Yeah, so for me, I've always felt like I perform better under pressure. So like when I was younger, obviously, and I said to my parents I wanted to try and be a goalkeeper when I'm older. They were kind of like, look, we'll help you to do that, and we'll like be really supportive of you, but you got to want it properly. We're not going to do this half-heartedly. So as soon as I said that, and I got some private training, and like I started feeling like I was going to be like half decent, then I had my parents like ringing up like clubs and stuff, like, are you looking for a goalie and whatnot, and just basically just networking. And then we kind of got lucky with it and found somebody that could get me into a pro club. So they managed to get me into Southend on trial. And then like done really well. And like I said, in those trial scenarios, I personally feel quite at home, but I know that a lot of people feel like a bit within themselves, and it can be tough. It can be tough. But I think when you're a goalie, it's probably a bit easier, because goalkeepers generally are quite a close-knit group. So like when we train, we're working in like 3s and 4s. So it's quite easy to have like a relationship with people. Whereas as an outfield player, you can probably feel like you're a little bit like rabbit in the headlights. There's so many people around you. You haven't quite generated those relationships as easily.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, I totally get you. Because what's interesting for me as well, kind of when I think back from when I played a bit and whatnot, when you go to trials, I always remember where you kind of do all your technical elements and everything, you do your fitness, and then you get to the stage where it's 11-a-side games. And you might have 6 teams, but you have 2 goalkeepers at each team for the whole thing. And these guys are getting so much game time and so much kind of eyesight on them. However, the odds for them getting through is even harder, because let's face it, if you've got your first team goalkeeper who's been through the academy and the academy's investing in them and he's really good, do you bring in this other goalkeeper that looks really good and then not get the chance to play him? I've always found it in dynamic with goalkeepers, because of course what one person looks in season goalkeeper might be completely different elsewhere as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, I've always been technically quite good. I've only ever been like just 6 foot, just over 6 foot. So like I go to some clubs where they'll be very like old school in what they're looking for. Especially like 6-7 years ago, and then they'd instantly turn around and say, no, they're not for us. And some clubs would be like completely different. But I think what you're saying is true, in that you just have to. I went to a few like higher clubs on trial, and they were really impressed. But like, you're just as good as what we've got. Like you have to be better for us to take you. So for goalkeepers, it is definitely harder, just because there's just less positions to fight for. And I'd look at it and be like, well, I'm young. Like, if I can have this training that these guys have had, like, I feel like I can push on. But unfortunately, it just doesn't work like that.
But if that's one thing that's been quite evident with you, you do want to push on. And kind of circling back to when we were talking about the FA Trophy, how big are games like that for players like yourself or for goalkeepers? Because usually when you kind of get like cup runs and everything, everyone kind of thinks of, you know what, if a striker gets 4 goals in the cup run, he's the next big thing. But for a goalkeeper, how important is it in terms of having those moments to showcase yourself? Like, for instance, FA trophies, Wembley. How important is that for you?
Yeah, it's massive. It's a strange one, obviously, as a goalkeeper. It's like you depend on scenarios that happen around you. So like I can't really go and like impact the game and make myself do things that people can look at and think that's good. So all you can control is kind of like how you carry yourself when the game happens. So that even if you have nothing to do, people turn around and go, "Oh, you're decent." Like, do you know what I mean? Leave a good impression on them. Those games are massive, and like this season's just been kind of like really lucky for me that in the cup runs that I've just like made saves at crucial times or saved penalties. Yeah, it's just sometimes things just fall for you, you know. Like
that segues into a really nice conversational piece about kind of the whole psyche of a goalkeeper, because I mean, like you just mentioned, a goalkeeper's game is really based on everything that's happened around you.
Yeah.
And I mean, being the person you are, being the competitor you are, you want to showcase your ability to do great saves, to show your distribution and everything. For that to happen, however, it's kind of like, okay, you might have to be a bit under pressure. Yeah. How is that because that happens every single week for you. What is that kind of internal battle like? Because I'm sure you want to get stuck into it, but the irony is, if you're getting stuck into it, the team must be potentially under the cushion.
Under a bit of pressure. Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird one. Like for me, I've always like, felt like I want to be busy. Like, sometimes I come away and it's really satisfying when you come away from a game and you've actually had nothing to do. It's a little bit satisfying, but at the same time, I think to myself, like, I kind of wish I had something more to do today. Like always wanting a bit of action, but at the same time, I think like it's a skill in itself, being ready for 90 plus minutes. So like those games where you haven't had as much action, like sometimes I turn around and go, well, was I prepared for that 95 minutes, if that makes sense? So like you can judge yourself both ways and kind of see it that way, because obviously the better team you play for in the league, chances are the less you're going to have to do. So like, are you going to be ready for that step up? Can you be focused for the whole game rather than relying on being busy to stay switched on, if that makes sense? It's like a completely different like skill set.
And with that being said then, do you reckon that there are some goalkeepers, and I know this is probably going to sound a bit crazy, but do you reckon there's some goalkeepers that maybe look at options on the table and say, you know what, where am I going to be really tested? And then that might be to a team that typically may not have the best defence, whereas if it's kind of like a striker, you probably think, okay, I'm going to go to a team that's going to create the most chances for me. Do goalkeepers kind of look at things sometimes and say, okay, you know what, this might be challenging because they're going to be in a scrap and they're going to need me?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a tough one. I think it's a dangerous kind of game to play. You're going to do that because like it can take a turn. You can go somewhere where they're in a scrap, but being a goalkeeper in a team where you're really struggling defensively is horrible, because you're exposed. Like when the team's not doing very well in the league or whatever, defensively they tend to be pretty unorganised.
Yeah.
So you start to then get exposed to situations that you wouldn't normally get exposed to, if that makes sense. So like my examples, like when I was playing in Boston North last year, like the way the games are played, like you're exposed to like a lot more decision making where like, do I come, do I go, like those kind of things. And then obviously an unexpected scenarios, which can kind of like lead to you making errors at times.
Yeah.
Whereas the better club you're in, the decisions you have to make are a lot more structured. So for example, this season, I know that if my defender shows him inside, I know that I can kind of edge towards the other side of the goal because he'll cover off the near one. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like it's a bit of a catch-22 because you want to be busy, but then if you're in a team that's really unorganised, like you're leaving yourself you're leaving yourself quite exposed. I always try and use like an example of the goalies that we coach.
Yeah.
And say like you're never as far away as you think you are. If you were to take Neuer and put him in Norwich's team this year, he would look nowhere near as good as he does for Bayern Munich, if that makes sense. Like he would still be great, but he wouldn't look anywhere near as good as he does for Bayern.
That's a really good take, actually. When you think about it as well, it's because it depends on the team and the personnel around you. And
exactly, yeah.
At that level, it is quite interesting because, I mean, sometimes you get some young boys playing, you might get some older lads, sometimes you might get a lot of change and rotation. as a goalkeeper, what would you say the most important factor is for your performance going well, in terms of, is it having a good centre-back partnership? Is it having familiarity with the whole back line? What kind of makes your life a lot easier?
Like communication to begin with.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of just ties into, it doesn't really matter kind of who's playing, but so long everybody has an understanding of what we're doing at certain times.
Yeah.
And obviously that tends to come from continuity in your back four.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of the time you don't see back four change very much.
Yeah.
So definitely kind of like having an understanding of what your role is with your defenders, if that makes sense. Sometimes when there's a lot of change, like you kind of, there's a grey area where it can start to get a little bit confused, and that's kind of where mistakes can happen. So for me, that's what I would say. And also from a personal perspective, in terms of my performance, if I've got a manager that I feel has a lot of faith in me, and you can tell if somebody's got genuine faith in you, and they're not putting any added pressure on you.
Yeah.
Like, as in, you're going to make a mistake, you're out of the team straight away as a goalkeeper. Like that's something that I can thrive off, because you can almost like just calm down a little bit. I don't know if you remember Joe Hart playing in, I think it was either the Euros or the World Cup, and everybody was making a comment about how he looked like too like on it, too ready to go, almost a little bit too eager. And I think sometimes it can help to be just to like slow down a little bit and just know that you've got this, rather than feeling like you're having to play at 100 miles an hour all the time.
No, I do hear where you're coming from with that. One thing that's always really interesting, especially with young goalkeepers, and as someone that played centre half, I'm sure you can probably relate to a centre half's worries. Goalkeepers and communication. You mentioned communication now. Goalkeepers and being vocal. For me, it's always something interesting, because when I see a lot of goalkeepers that go on to make it, those are goalkeepers that kind of give instruction and whatnot. And you've got some goalkeepers that naturally it's not the first thing that they will do. They'll rather lead by example and save and whatnot. In terms of breaking through, how important is skills and attributes like that? Because even for outfield positions, I see a lot of people that don't actually break it through. And it's not because they don't have the technical ability. It's just that those other skills, like how you're working with a teammate or communication, are not there. How important?
They struggle to like impose on the game a little bit like that. Yeah.
How important has that been for you? Because that's one thing that if anyone ever speaks about you, they always say that, oh yeah, Chris is always talking, he's always demanding the box and everything. How important has it been for you to push your way through?
Yeah, so definitely that's a big thing. I always try and think to myself, and like naturally, I'm not somebody that's always screaming and shouting, because I focus so much on my own performance. Like that's not naturally who I am, but I force it. I'm training myself to be like that, if that makes sense. I always try and think to myself, like, if we play a game and it finishes 0-0, and the scouts come to watch, and neither goalie's had anything to do, who's he going to take? Is he going to take somebody that's been on the back seat, like kind of coasted through the game, or is he going to take somebody that's going to be on their team, making sure everybody switched on for 90 minutes? He's definitely going to pick that one. So I always try and be more like that. Sometimes, like for me, it depends on what team you're in. So if I'm in a team that's like lacking confidence and like unorganized, I genuinely feel like sometimes screaming and shouting isn't the way to go, and it's more like calming them down a little bit, because it can get so frantic. I'm sure you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no.
So I think like the key isn't just shouting for 90 minutes; it's knowing when to use your different tones of voice and kind of which way to go with it. Like if you're losing, if you're winning 1-0 with a couple of minutes to go and you're under the cosh for the last 5 minutes, for me, I feel a lot better just like telling my team, like, just calm down, like we've got this, rather than like everyone at the panic station.
No, a random one. So I'm sure you're aware of this sort of situation that can happen in football, right? So it's a corner kick, everyone's marking up and whatnot. Corner comes in, some 6'6" centre half nods it in their post, and then you've got someone coming around and saying, "Whose man was it?" As a goalkeeper in that situation, how frustrating is that?
It is frustrating. Like it's unfortunately, it's one of those things that tend to happen. Like the interesting one for me is when people turn around to the goalkeeper and they say, "Oh, why aren't they organised? Like, you can't do their jobs for them. You know, like, we're organised, but that doesn't mean they can't lose their marker.
Yeah.
It is frustrating, but like for me, I know they're not meant to make the mistake. Like they don't need, like they know. Like I do find like because the things like that, like where it's set plays, you don't, unless it's really like well done. You don't really have an excuse because you've got the time to prepare every time. So that's why it frustrates me. If somebody like plays good football and manages to get in and scores, I think fair play. But like when it's like a set up scenario, like you don't really have that much of an excuse because you know what's coming, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So what's the sort of ambition for you? Because like you mentioned, you're young. You've got well, goalkeepers have loads of years in them, but you keep yourself in good condition, you're gonna have loads of years in you. I mean, what's the ambition for you? To know, whilst he's at Gillingham, didn't you play like a bit for Norway, didn't you?
Yeah, so I've gone away with Norway, and my mum's Norwegian, so I've done a bit there, and obviously like, that was brilliant. That was really good.
Now and stuff then, or
no, I haven't been, obviously, since I've kind of dropped out of full time. Like you kind of like fall away from it a little bit. So I haven't been for a couple of years now, but yeah, it's brilliant. Nice. Obviously, Norway is not that big of a country, so it was like it was. You get a lot of like players from lower divisions that go into it. It's brilliant there.
So yeah, so what's in terms of what you want to do in the game? Where do you see yourself going? Because I mean, you mentioned a lot. You have been touted quite a bit, and I mean the ability's there, but how far do you reckon you can push it?
If I'm honest, like I feel like technically and physically, I can play a high level. Like I feel like I definitely feel like I can play in the Football League without a doubt. How high will depend on a lot of stuff. Like my dream is just to go and play in the Football League, and I feel like I can personally. I feel like I could go and play at a good level in the Football League as well. It's just it's so situational. Depends on like so many things. Like song, I know that I can do everything I can to get there, and hopefully like, everything else works out. But that's the dream, to try and see if we can break into the Football League and not just do that, but play. Like I've previously had offers to go play to go to the Football League, but sit on the bench, and that's just not something that I'm interested in, to be honest. I'd rather go get experience.
Yeah, on that, because you do get a lot of goalkeepers where, if you look at their kind of career, they may be at good clubs, but they may only get like a cup fixture here, and they haven't asserted themselves as the first choice goalkeeper. You mentioned that that's not something you would want to do. Why do you think some goalkeepers do go down that route?
I mean, obviously, like I say, that's not something I would want to do in an ideal world. Like, it depends on, you know, who's coming in for you. Like, what if you feel like you might get an opportunity and then you end up not getting one. Like, you can't really turn your nose up at a lot of stuff. But a lot of it's obviously financial. Like, I'm not being funny. You get some goalies towards the end of their career. Look at, like, for example, Rob Green going to Chelsea. Like, he's got an unbelievable like setup there. I think he's coaching, and he's obviously getting a good wage and stuff. And like, you can't really turn your nose up at that. So I think that's going to be like the primary reason why. I think the lower leagues, I haven't really met a goalie that's happy to be number two or sit on the bench, unless it's maybe a young goalie that wants to get a bit of experience. So we've had a few this year that have kind of come with us and travelled and sat on the bench and stuff for, you know, to get some experience that they might not have had before.
Yeah. With yourself as well, I know, because you often go back to kind of the technicality and technical ability. One thing that's become really apparent in the last few years is the technical ability of goalkeepers, being able to be ping the ball and spray the ball and whatnot. And now it's almost become a standard. You can't be like a sick goalkeeper unless you've got that in your locker. But where has it come from? I know you mentioned that at that level as well, you get some teams that they don't want that. They just want you to, you know what, just knock it in the channel and we're going to get someone to run into the channel. But where's that come from? And are more teams at that level starting to say, you know what, we can play for the goalkeeper, we can utilise him, and etc.?
Yeah, obviously, I think it's come from higher. Like, if you look at the Premier League down from, I don't know, say 8-9 years back, you had a lot of brilliant goalies, but you can just see like it's filtering down now that everybody's starting to want to play a similar way, or at least have somebody that's going to be effective in that sense. Obviously, in previous seasons, earlier on, you had the likes like Van der Sar, who was unbelievable at it, but at Man United, but they would be one of a very few teams that would play kind of through the goalie in that sense.
Yeah.
And I think it's just like catching on, people starting to realise, like, why would you want somebody that's not good with their feet when 80% of a goalkeeper's game is played with a ball at your feet? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, I think there was last pre-season, I played a pre-season game. Somebody was doing some stats on how many times I touched the ball, and I think it was a busy game, and I touched the ball. I think it was like 70 times, and like 65 of them were with my feet. And you just think, like, why would you not want somebody that's going to be better with their feet?
Yeah,
it just makes sense, really. Obviously, being a shot stopper should be good anyway. A good shot stopper at that level.
Yeah.
And then everything else kind of comes as a bonus. You know, your communication, your kicking, and your demanding of the area and stuff like that.
You mentioned Van der Sar. Who was your favourite goalkeeper growing up?
Rayner was my favourite. I'm a Liverpool fan, and he was like obviously one of the first. No, not one of the first, but one of like the pioneers of like the so-called like modern goalkeeper like nowadays. So he was like somebody I looked up to massively. Yeah, not wrong.
Well, it's mentioning Liverpool's almost like a bittersweet anecdote because we don't know what's going with the Premier League. I mean, that could be the first Premier League for them, or it couldn't be. And then you're in a situation where I could potentially be 2 games away from Wembley and whatnot. So I think it's interesting to see how people are doing at this time, because football is it's more than a game, right? I mean, for you, it's something you've dedicated your life to week in, week out to train, and you're in a situation where you can't do that at the moment. So it's always nice to kind of understand the mental and how kind of people are coping with it. So appreciate you giving your time, man. And I'm sure we're going to see you fly up the leagues in the seasons to come. And let's hope you can get some football before the end of the season and get to Wembley, because it'll be a nice way to cap it all off.
Yeah, it wouldn't be bad, would it? Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
No, thanks for being here. That's another episode of Quarantine Talks.